porn is stealing your time, draining your energy, ruining relationships, and robbing you of your power? It's time to take your power back. Eric Zuzack tried 12-step programs and felt powerless when they didn't work. He then discovered the power of mindfulness in combating addictions. Porn Talk is about reclaiming your power to end your porn addiction. It's how Eric transformed from powerless Eric to powerful Eric. Ready to break your porn addiction? Learn from Eric, the powerful Eric. Here's your host, Eric Zuzack.
Welcome to Porn Talk. This is Powerful Eric. This show is not just about breaking addictions. It's about breaking belief systems. We are bound by self-imposed and societal chains. Break those rusty, nasty, heavy old chains and get empowered right now. Today, I have an awesome guest. We have with us the author of Tragic Hero. His goal in life is to help people realize that they don't need to hit rock bottom like he did in order to make the changes necessary to enjoy a joyful and fulfilling life. In addition to having 21 years of life and business coaching experience, he also has 24 years of sales and real estate experience, as well as 28 years of professional writing experience. He's conducted over 40,000 coaching sessions via one-on-one calls, live training sessions, group calls, and video training meetings with real estate sales professionals and other entrepreneurs across the United States and Canada. In 2021, he was nominated for Success Magazine's Success 125, one of the 125 most influential people in real estate that gets results. In September of 2022, his book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, was published and became a bestseller in 4 categories on Amazon. In it, he uses lessons he's learned from overcoming lifelong addictions to food, sex, pornography, and money to give others the hope and confidence they need to break through their own challenges. And next week, during the week of Thanksgiving, he's going to be a special guest on a nationally televised talk show, Times Square Today, where he'll share his story about how he overcame a life filled with terrible decisions. Welcome the author of Tragic Hero, Wally Bressler. Welcome, Wally.
Man, I just realized how old that makes me sound. Holy cow. That's crazy. Hey, Eric, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So Wally, let's get right into it. Let's get right into the addiction stuff. I mean, that's why people are listening. One of the reasons why they're listening to this. Tell us your story and about the addictions.
Sure. As with a lot of people, or probably most people, the things that kind of spurred on my addictions were things that happened when I was a kid. When you grow up in an Italian family or a family of Italian heritage, there's 3 ways you get communicated with. That would be food, getting yelled at, and getting hit. That's the 3 ways that you're communicated with. And so, it's not every way, but those are the 3 main means of getting points.
Food, getting yelled at, and getting hit.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Broomsticks, wooden spoons, hands, shoes, remote controls, whatever was in reach, And so, my parents, unfortunately, they had some tough times themselves growing up. My dad's mom was especially mean and nasty, very angry Sicilian woman. And, so he had a tough time when he grew up. Both my parents smoked, so they were both addicted to cigarettes. They were both overweight, addicted to food. My dad also drank. So, when my parents got married, they moved from, when I was born in Brooklyn to New Hampshire. And so my mom had a job. My dad was still trying to figure things out for himself. And so he took care of me a good portion of the time when I was young. One of my punishments when I was younger, like 4, 5, 6 years old, was to be sent to bed without dinner. And so, that created within me a fear of being hungry. And then oddly enough, using that food to kind of store up because being afraid I wasn't going to eat again. So that started about a 45-year addiction to food. It was a binge eater for most of my life up to a couple of years ago. And so, I remember first grade, I had David Carradine lunchbox. Remember Kung Fu David Carradine?
Absolutely. I was a big Kung Fu fan.
Yep, let me age both of us now. So anyway, I had a Kung Fu lunchbox, David Carradine. And I remember my very first day of first grade, they were handing out the milks for snack time. And I ate my snack and my entire lunch that day, right then and there. So I didn't have lunch at lunchtime, just afraid I wasn't going to be able to eat. And so that was basically a theme throughout my entire life. In fact, at one point I got up to 480 pounds. So it's pretty big.
Wow.
Yep. Excuse me.
How tall are you?
Thankfully 6'3", but still, even at 6'3", 480 pounds is still a big guy. So
yeah.
And then so when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused, and so that has a huge impact on you, as you are aware. And when people are sexually abused, they either go towards sex or they go away from sex. It's kind of no middle road usually. And so
right.
I went towards sex, and that was kind of the beginning of my addiction to sex.
Right.
When I was 11, I found my father's pornography magazines, and then when I was 12, I started having sex and engaging in sexual activity regularly. And then for the entire time of my childhood, I was bullied pretty badly. My parents really never taught me to protect myself, had low self-esteem and whatnot. Excuse me. And so I was bullied. By the time I was 14, I was pretty much addicted to, sex and pornography and food. As I get older, and looking back at my life, I realized, we also were poor when I grew up. And I really hadn't put my finger on it, but I always had issues around money. And, I remember kids at school dressed differently. They had Levi's and Nikes and nice puffy ski coats, and they would all go skiing, and we didn't have any money for that. And then I'd even compare my lunch. I'd have like a sandwich or an apple and some crackers, and these kids would have like an entire smorgasbord of food, I'm saying, sandwiches, snack cakes.
Yeah.
I still remember cowtails, little cowtail candies that to this day I've never had one. And so the kids always had those. I remember asking my mom, can we have those? She's like, no. And so anyway, as I grew older and started working, I started, using money to.
Hey, Wally, let me interrupt you for just a moment. You might appreciate this because Zig Ziglar, being in sales, one of Zig Ziglar's stories said that he said that when he was young, he always knew that he had enough food, because he said when he'd ask for seconds, he'd say, "No, you've had plenty."
Yeah, right. I remember that story. Yep, you've already had enough. Okay, good, thanks. That's true. Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Right. Yeah.
Big Zig fan. So anyway,
Me too.
As I get older, I was using money I was basically spending money to get people to like me. And then, I've probably blown through about $5 million in my lifetime already of earnings. And so I've not used money well at all. And so, as I grew up and got older, as with all addictions, they get worse, using those addictions to assuage my pain. And, I spent most of my teenage years and my young adult life basically not having good relationships with women, just having sex with women, looking for that approval, looking for that acceptance. And by the time the emotions came in, I was pretty much ready to go, because I was not ready to do anything emotionally. Used food regularly. I still remember we would go to someone's house for a buffet. I was always first at the buffet. Sex and pornography. I mean, I pretty much was addicted to pornography until, I don't know, 2000 and let's call it 16, 17, so a long time. And then, I was unfaithful to my wife 4 times with 4 other women. And, ultimately I made a lot of bad decisions as a result of that. One of which landed me in federal prison for a year.
Yeah, I saw a little of that in your book.
Yep, for mail fraud, which again, the money issue, if that makes sense, just, looking to make a lot of money. I wasn't looking to steal any money at the time, but I certainly wasn't trying to do the thing that was filled with integrity. I was looking the other way on stuff, making assumptions, ask questions, but not enough. And so, that cost me a lot, more than over thousands of dollars. But, I had to go back to square one in relationships with my children.
Yeah.
There's a convicted felon. You're limited to some of the things you could do.
And you were in prison for over a year, right?
366 days to be exact. So,
wow.
And then, when I got out of prison, I hadn't really dealt with anything when I was in prison. I mean, I lost a lot of weight. I lost like 140 pounds almost, but I hadn't dealt with any of the emotional things that I needed to deal with. And so when I got out of prison, kind of went back into all the same things. Does that make sense? Ended up having a relationship with somebody, and I wanted it to work so badly because I never had a good relationship. And so just wanted to be in love. And so I just looked past all the red flags. We were together for 4.5 years, just took an engagement ring from me. she wouldn't move down to Texas to be with me. And so I broke up with her. And a few days later, I found out that she had been married the entire time we were together.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So she actually lived in a different state. So she was in a totally different state. And so I didn't even, and so I took everything she said at face value. Anything that seemed sketchy, I just ignored. And then that was kind of like the final bad decision in, 40 plus years of bad decisions. And so about a month later, I decided I wanted to take my own life. And, actually I was sitting in the same place. Actually, I was, sitting right here. It was a different setup then. And like, I was looking out the door of my towards the garage, and I could see the light on. And I was kind of going through my mind how I was going to do it. And I just was thinking of all these things, and everything I came up with impacted somebody else, because I can't have a gun. I'm a convicted felon, My medicine, I was like, I didn't have enough medicine to kill myself. And I'm still a big guy at this point, 425 pounds. And so then all of a sudden it was like God tapped me on the shoulders, like, hey, remember your dad died when you were 23 and how bad that was for your family? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And so I decided then I was going to fight. And as you know, having overcome an addiction yourself, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't, I couldn't overcome my addictions all at once, just because there was so much to unpack. Picture going up to an attic you haven't been in 20 years and opening up boxes. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot that was up here. So I was literally unpacking decades of hurt that I was hurt or hurting other people. Lots of shame and addiction, as you know, lots of pain and addiction. And so it kind of was like, the easiest one for me to give up was the sex. I just decided I wasn't just going to have indiscriminate sex with people anymore. And because that woman had broken my heart so badly, I didn't go and date anybody for almost 2.5 years. And then pornography after that, because they were most closely. And as my relationship with God improved, I can't, because my faith was strengthening, I realized how disrespectful it was and how painful it was, and how you can't have a good relationship with God if you're doing sinful things like that. And then the money thing got better. I started making more money and doing much better with it. In fact, I was, things have been so good. I was actually to write a book and do a lot of other things because of that, because I was doing better with my money. And then really the last one is the food. And that one's the one that has been the longest. And honestly, I haven't had a binge eating issue for a couple of years, but up until a few months ago, I still have some issues with eating too much food or eating bad food.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2.5 months ago, I just made the decision that I had to be done. I'm 54 years old. I've got 4 kids. My dad died when I was 23 at 49. Didn't see his 50th birthday. Didn't see his 25th wedding anniversary. Missed 11 out of 12 grandkids. Missed 2 of my, my sister and my brother graduating from college. My brother graduated from high school. Just missed everything. I can't do that. So in the last 2+ months, I've lost about 50 pounds. And really monitoring what I eat, exercising, and my mindset is vastly different than it was before. But that was the one that took the longest to overcome, because I think it'd been around the longest.
Right.
So it's just, and obviously you talk a lot about mindfulness. I teach that to my clients on a regular basis, and it really is the key to reducing emotional reactivity and putting yourself in a position where when that addictive issue comes up, that you can fight and actually win. So
yeah,
well, that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of all that. Lots of people hurt along the way. I got family members that don't talk to me anymore. I have friends that don't talk to me anymore. I filed for bankruptcy 4 times. A lot of bad choices.
Yeah, I can relate to so much of what you've said. And one of the scary things is the trying to kill yourself, suicide. It seems like about every other guy that contacts me now says, oh, I'm considering killing myself, or I tried to kill myself. Whether it's addiction to porn, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever, regardless, this is very serious. Like, we're talking about people's lives here. And so I appreciate you having the courage to tell your story, because I can guarantee that there's someone listening to this right now that is on the, they're teetering. They're looking for answers. So they're listening or watching this podcast. And so I appreciate you sharing your story.
You're welcome.
About that, if you could maybe unpack that a little bit more, like what stopped you? Tell us a little bit more about that, if you would.
Yeah, I remember it was interesting because it was October of 19, I think, and then my uncle had knee surgery, and so I flew up to New Hampshire to spend some time with my uncle because they're getting older, And before I had left, I had hired a psychiatrist and a dietitian to help me, and then so I kind of had been working on it, and then I went to New Hampshire, and they were kind of like, "Hey, can't really help you." You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do this over you being in New Hampshire. So and so basically I was in so much pain, Eric, that I just could not take it. I remember laying in my bedroom and laying in bed, looking at the ceiling and feeling that there was no way out. You know what I'm saying? I decided I wasn't going to hurt myself. So I felt like I have to do something because I just can't do this anymore. And anybody who has an addiction, you go through a lot of pain. That's the reason, it's funny. The reason for the addiction is pain, right? That's it, because of that pain. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore, and I was at my wit's end. And so I decided I was going to get help, and actually got fired by my psychiatrist and by my dietitian because they felt like I wasn't committed to doing what I needed to do. And I hadn't. I mean, if you've been an addict of any sort, you've seen psychiatrists, you've seen psychologists,
Yep.
you've seen therapists, you've seen counselors, you've paid for coaches, you've talked to all your friends. I mean, you've run the gamut. You know what I'm saying? And basically, you just weren't ready. What do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Right.
And so for me, I finally met somebody in July of 2020 during COVID. Interesting story. Her name's Kelly. Actually, when you read my book, I talk about her in a couple of the chapters because she literally saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I don't wait in line for anything. I've been patient my whole life. You go to a restaurant, how long's the wait? If it's more than 10 or 15 minutes, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a ticket to something, I'm not waiting in line to get in a bar. I'm saying? I'm not waiting to get in line anyway. So, and I remember talking to the lady who answered the phone, and she says, we don't have, and that was the thing, because as COVID wore on, it was exposing everybody's mental health issues.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, the thing is, right. I mean, people are like, oh, COVID caused all these mental health issues. I mean, it may have in some people, but for most people, it just kind of ripped the lid off of what everybody's holding down. You know what I'm saying? Fear of losing job, fear of getting sick, fear of dying, being confined, just created just a freaking storm. And so people came out of the woodwork getting mental health, and she's like, we don't have anybody right now. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I called everybody, Eric. I mean, I would say I went through the yellow pages, but there are no yellow pages anymore. So I don't know why I keep dating myself. I don't know what the problem is today, but anyway, so I called the place, and she's like, we don't have anybody. She goes, we have this really, really good woman who's an addiction specialist. She's awesome. She goes, she has openings from time to time. You should just put her name down. I'm like, your name down? I said, okay. And then literally 2 weeks later, they called me, and so I've been working with her ever since. I was doing two sessions a week for 2 years, and then we went to once a week, and now it's like twice a month, really just for some smaller things, you know what I'm saying? Just trying to, but I mean, it's just amazing. But the thing is that, at the end of the day, you have to do the work.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of work.
Yeah. And everybody can do the work. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think anybody's ever died from mindfulness. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's ever died from mindfulness. Nobody's ever died from journaling. Nobody's ever died from affirmations or mental picturization. Nobody's ever died for any of that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it feels like it sometimes, and so it's tough, man. And my heart goes out to anybody who has an addiction. And it's interesting because food addiction is different because you have to have food every day.
Right. So,
while some people have addictions wrestle with wanting to go out and have a drink or wanting to go watch pornography, like I'm not comparing anything, but having a food addiction, I'm like wrestling, not as much now, but somewhat still. I'm wrestling like every hour of every day of, you know what I'm saying? Because if you have it, like people who are addicted to porn, if they have a job, I mean, usually can't look at porn at work, if they have a job, they can't get loaded at work. You know what I'm saying? They can't do, for the most part, right? But I work from home, my refrigerator and kitchen are right over there. So, and again, my addiction is no worse or no better than anybody else's. All I'm saying is just a different fight.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And so
it makes total sense.
Yeah. And so anyway, but I if anything else, I mean, I'm sure this is probably the same for you. I just want to, be an example to people of the fact that if you want to do it, no matter how old you are, no matter how bad things have been, you can do it. You
Yeah,
can really, really do it. And it's,
you can.
and the other thing is, and you probably realize this as well, is that it feels like it's going to be forever. But when you actually put in the time and do the work, it actually takes less time than you think it would. In fact, I mean, after 6 months, I know I was feeling measurably better. I wasn't completely where, because when I was talking to Kelly, I was literally suicidal. I was like, I did not, I'm saying, in fact, every call would end, do you think you're going to hurt yourself? And no, I don't, sometimes I'd be like, she would wait there. But, in 6 months, I felt measurably better. A year later, felt even better. And, the process of unpacking things is tough because you unpack it, it's painful, then you get some relief, but then your brain's like, okay, here's more.
Yeah.
Okay, there's more, right? Because our brains are like, they're homeostasis mechanisms. They want clarity, they want peace, they want understanding. It doesn't want to deal with that. We keep pushing it down with alcohol and food and sex and pornography. And then when that wears off, the brain's like, okay, let's deal with this. Oh, that pain is a signal that something needs to be dealt with. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Anyway,
does.
so that's kind of, I mean, that's pretty much, one other thing I saw this online. I figured I'd check it. It's called The Bad Habit Breaker.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little book that I got, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's 30 days of 10 minutes of journaling in the morning and 10 minutes of journaling at night, answering a couple of questions. But I love it. It says, you have the universal truths, and it asks you 3 questions. But the last one is, have I accepted that my craving or urge to do my bad habit is caused by the last time I did my bad habit, and if I do my bad habit again, I will never break this cycle. So,
Love it.
yeah, pretty interesting.
Love it.
So, I think does that answer your question? Did I give
Yeah.
you okay.
Yeah, it sure does. And boy, you have so much experience here.
Mhm.
One of the things you said was like, this doesn't have to, may seem like this is going to take forever.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to, but I would have to add to that though, depending on the path that you choose addiction help with, because I went the traditional route with a traditional therapist. Of course, they put me on antidepressants.
Mhm.
They said I had to go to 12-step meetings, and I went to those 12-step meetings for almost 20 years with very little to show for it. And I
Mhm.
learned that I was powerless and that I had a disease and that I had this for life. And I'm really into personal development, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, all that.
Love all those guys. Yep.
And a lot of the things I was learning in the 12 step were the opposite of what I was learning in personal development. So I was really confused, and it really caused a lot of trouble with me. And finally, one day I'm like, I need to find a different way. And I found this little app to use about mindfulness. And just on a whim, I thought, I'm going to put my login as Powerful Eric.
Love it.
And in that moment, pitiful, powerless, porn addicted Eric died, and powerful Eric was born. And so, yes, it doesn't have to be forever. But in my opinion, if you take the traditional route, that is the long, hard road.
And it all starts with the decision. I was an English major in college, and I took a lot of Shakespeare, and I was actually just trying to make sure that I had the hold on a sec here, the exact quote. So it's from Julius Caesar. It says, "A coward dies 1,000 times before his death, but a valiant tastes of death but once." You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of like, you can conquer your addiction in fits and starts, and try and not try and try and not try and deal with all that pain, or you can finally make the decision once and for all and just gut it out and work through it, and eventually it will get better for you. You know what I'm saying? Or it can be just the most painful, excruciating thing you've ever done before. Yeah. And it is pretty painful and excruciating to begin with, don't get me wrong, but there's degrees of excruciating and painful. So
yeah, I like to use the definition, the original, the word decide, the origin of the word, it means to cut off from.
Yes.
So when you decide, you are choosing to cut off from all that other stuff.
Right.
And I love that. And another one of the things that you were talking about is food addiction. And so when I stopped using porn, I found a tremendous amount of anger and even rage. And also, I realized that food and sugar are my next thing to address. And actually, as we speak, I'm doing this 100-day thing. Um, and if you join my Facebook group, you can view my journey. And basically, it's a journey of getting back into physical shape. What had happened? My dad had died suddenly,
Really.
and
Sorry to
I
hear
didn't
that.
realize it, but I apparently was using food to numb, cope, and escape. And just a matter of a couple months, I gained 25 pounds. And so this 100-day journey between now and Valentine's Day is documenting me getting back into shape. And just to be a little more specific, some guys choose to just quit the porn. Some guys choose to quit porn and masturbation. And a long time ago, I chose to raise the bar and remove both. And after my father died, I had slipped with the masturbation part of it. And so I wanted to get back on the horse with that. So this 100-day journey between now and Valentine's Day is documenting me working out and doing things like that.
Yes.
And
Nice.
but food, I really think, is the closest thing to a porn addiction, because drugs and alcohol are outside of ourselves. And yes, food is outside of ourselves, but we have to have food to live. So I think out of all the addictions, I don't think it's any coincidence that both you and I had struggles with food.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, and I hear what you're saying, and good luck on your journey. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
That's awesome for you. Excuse me. It's certainly super inspiring for anybody who follows you, for sure. And I just actually, while you were talking, I joined your group. So, and thanks to whoever accepted me. Excuse me. But what's interesting is that you go by an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, there's a bunch of people smoking, drinking coffee. What I'm saying? And I think part of that is giving something up cold turkey is hard. What I'm saying? And sometimes we need to lean on something else as we go through it, and so, and if you have a couple of addictions, they say, oh, you have an addictive personality. There's no such thing as an addictive personality. You just, excuse me, you have pain and don't have a lot of mental fortitude, don't have the skill set to be mindful or even the knowledge about what it takes to be mindful. And, I say this to my clients all the time, like when we're kids, our brains are like little savings accounts where only deposits can be made, because very few parents know how to help kids extract the negative stuff and turn it into positive things. So, especially, I don't know how old you are, but,
52.
I'm 54. So no such thing as sexual abuse in the late 60s and early 70s. No real such thing as child abuse in the late 60s and 70s. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of those things went unwashed, if you will, whatever, for a long time. So, you get yelled at as a kid, that's bad for your self-esteem. You get hit as a kid, that's bad for your self-esteem. You get, bullied, that's bad for your self-esteem. There's all, and then, the terrible things people say to us, and the like you talked about, the limiting beliefs that come, the hidden identities we create about ourselves when we think we can and can't do. They're kindling, just getting not just piled on, but then we're strengthening them by, adhering to those belief systems and avoiding things that cause us the pain and getting involved in things that mask the pain. And so we do it our entire lives, right? And so it's hard to just turn that off. So it's completely reasonable that somebody who gives up porn might want to go and pick something else up to help with that, even though you're not watching porn and you're not getting that same, chemically infused feeling. Food can do that. I'm saying? Smoking can do that. Work can do that. Exercise can do that. I mean, there's so many things that can do that, but it's perfectly reasonable for somebody to go through that. I think the saving grace here is that, you have these references, excuse me, when you overcome one addiction, you can use that same thought process, that same, whatever, that same pattern, that same syntax, to then overcome another challenge faster and easier than you did the first one.
Yeah. And like I said, that is exactly what I'm doing now
Good.
with the food. And something you also said earlier about having a very short attention span, like now wanting to wait. So I'll reluctantly, I'd have to say very reluctantly, I started a TikTok account to share my journey. And oh my gosh, these videos are so, 5 seconds to 10 seconds. The long ones are 60 seconds.
Mhm.
And we're creating a world of people that have the attention span of a gnat.
Mhm.
And I feel for these kids because you and I, we didn't have high speed internet. It didn't exist when we were little. And so these kids have some very, very big challenges to overcome.
I think part of what challenges me too is going out to dinner and seeing a family, and the parents are all looking at their phones, and the kids are,
Oh,
the kids are looking at what do you call it?
social.
Something online, whatever, social media, and nobody's talking to each other. And
It makes me so sad. It
yeah.
really
So
does.
how are you going to teach these kids to have relationships with people and have conversations with people?
It's
Like,
sad.
I was
Yeah.
at a restaurant the other day, and I saw an elderly couple, and they had gotten up together to go get something. And they came back, and I looked at the table, and they both had their big old oversized iPads with the tent to hold it up, and they sat there and watched TV across from each other while they had dinner. I mean, what I'm saying? It's terrible. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, look, people can do whatever they want. It's not for me to judge, and
Yeah.
I kind of just did, and I'm sorry, but I just think it's how do you get people to connect with each other and to work with each other and build relationships with each other, and how do you get to strengthen those skill sets that are going to help you fight off challenges and pain in life if you're sitting there watching TV and not dealing with your problems that might need to be dealt with, or even fun things.
Yeah. And that's a good segue. So what is the positive side here? Like how, with in your book and that, how did you finally start turning things around? And, I know this is a process. We're all in a process,
Yeah.
but how do you start finally turning things around? And you are wildly business successful.
Oh, thank
Like
you.
people
Yeah.
don't realize, I looked you up, I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, you ain't playing.
I've been actually, it's interesting because I hit everything really well for a long time. I was very fortunate. I mean, I grew up in Nashville, New Hampshire, and I, I played high school sports. I did well academically for the most part. I went to like one of the top 15 liberal arts colleges in the country. I wouldn't have gotten in if I wasn't like 6'3", 250 pounds coming out of high school, of course. But my grades are good, but they weren't good enough to get into there. But I played all 4 years. I was a letter winner all 4 years. I got a job in corporate America. And by the time I was 28, I was making $100,000 a year. I got married, I had 4 amazing kids. I was on The Biggest Loser in 2006.
Oh,
Lost 116 pounds. Yeah, I've had. Yeah, you can check that out. And then I sold. It's funny because I suffered from call reluctance for 10 years, but I sold 72 houses in my first 14 months in the real estate business, and I mean, I
wow.
a lot of success.
Wait, say that you sold
72
houses in your first
14 months.
months.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't all me. I got connected with the right guy. I had a great mentor, but and so yeah, no, I'm saying, but I have been very successful, and I've worked with some of the top, real estate agents in the United States and Canada. But that entire time while I was doing all that, I was doing it just to run away from my shame, and my addictions. I was addicted to so many things. I mean, I would eat in my car all the time. You know what I'm saying? I meant to lie to my ex-wife about a cheeseburger because I didn't want to fight with her.
And let me interrupt you there too. So out of your car, we both have extensive sales backgrounds. And I really think that was a big part of why it took me longer to break free of this than normal, because as a salesperson, you spend a lot of time by yourself. I would spend a lot of time in my home office. And I think salespeople in particular, may have some larger challenges than a lot of people with addictive type of things. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, you're stuck with only one set of thought patterns when you're by yourself most of the time, and that's you, right? Your own, and usually those are not very conducive to breaking addictions and getting over things, And I saw that when I was looking at some of the stuff, and you talked about empowering salespeople and helping them change their lives. So I was just checking. I was doing some research on your stuff, and I really thought about that. And I'm like, salespeople they're driven people, right? To be a good salesperson, you have to be driven, right? So you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a commission salesperson, it's fraught with potentially a lot of ups and downs. So there's lots of fear, there's lots of pain, there's lots of pressure, and having an addiction, especially porn addiction, because if you're traveling, you can watch it in your, right? You can go to a nice hotel, you can rent porn movies, and they don't come up as porn movies, so you're protected there, right? You have internet now in your room, so you've got your what do you call it? Your laptop, and now you've got it on your phone. And I used to go to strip clubs when I would travel for business.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go, and I couldn't put it on the company dime, and I didn't take anybody, but I would go places, and they remember me. You know what I'm saying? But so I used to, and so because you're by yourself, and
Yes, you're by yourself.
And usually, if you have an addiction, it's because something pretty crappy happened when you were a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and because you were never told or shown how to take care of something. Your level of what's what I'm looking for, your self-control, discipline is not great to begin with. So you're already at a disadvantage because your brain has not been wired, or you've not trained yourself to go ahead and fight. So you're literally the kid in the candy store. You know what I'm saying? You're out and about.
Mm-hmm.
Addictions are, it just pops up. Interesting, by the way. I remember one of the folks I worked with, I asked the question. I said, how is it that I've eaten, this is literally a few years ago, how is it when I've eaten an hour later I want something? Why do I want shrimp scampi after I just had a huge meal? And she said something very interesting. She says, since we were a child, we've been avoiding pain, and we basically said to our brain, let's do what we have to avoid this pain. Whether it was an avoidance strategy like procrastination, perfectionism, something like that, or if it was whatever, when it was, usually an addiction when you're 6 that you can speak of, but we have these addictions, and these addictions get stronger. The more we rely on them, the stronger they get. And what she said to me is that we train our brains to be such that, because our brains are created to protect us and keep us alive, through addiction, we're training our brain to actually get ahead of future fearful situations, to get ahead of future painful situations. So things could be perfectly fine and perfectly normal, and all of a sudden you'll want to eat, or you'll want to watch pornography. Yeah. And it won't even be a trigger, but it's just your brain saying, hey, you know what? Let's just get ready. Why wait? Why wait until the problem comes? Let's just get ready now, right? And so, and then it's right, and that's what happens. And so it's crazy.
Yeah. Wally, you might appreciate this. So I do intermittent fasting and regular fast. And about a year ago, I actually did an 11-day fast. And people think, oh my God, why didn't you die? Or you can live an extremely long time without food.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and actually I could have went longer, but we had a social thing to go to, so I chose to end the fast. But what I learned in those 11 days with not one morsel of food, it was just a water fast, is that, because what I noticed is that hunger would come in waves. And what I learned is, most of the time when I eat, it's not because I'm hungry. And I'd say most of the time. Mm-hmm. So most of the time when I'm eating, it's not because I'm hungry.
Right.
It's either boredom, fear, whatever. So that's what I learned from my 11-day fast, that most of the time I'm eating is not because I'm hungry.
And to your point, there's also emotional hunger. Right? When we have addictions, and this is science, this isn't me. I mean, I just learned this, but when we're addicted to something, we stop growing emotionally. And the reason we stop growing emotionally is because we're not letting our emotions process, right? We're not facing our challenges and facing our fears and dealing with them. We keep numbing them, right? Brene Brown says, when you numb one emotion, you numb them all. So we keep numbing our emotions. And so we are teaching ourselves to numb them just on there, like, or teaching ourselves to put ourselves in situations where something goes for a period of time where we don't have it. We taught our brains to, okay, I'm feeling something. I want whatever it is. So I want it to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a while to really divine between, is this emotional hunger or is this me really being hungry? But if you do the research, emotional hunger and physical hunger are two totally different things, because emotional hunger comes on over time. I mean, pardon me, physical hunger comes on over time. Emotional hunger just kind of, it just comes up. Is your brain going, okay, let's eat. Something's going, like, we got to get ready, you know? And so, and there's other things that are related to it. So so it is boredom, absolutely boredom. It could be you're tired. It could be that you're fearful and your brain's looking to protect you. And sometimes it's emotional hunger, but it's important that you sit for a second. That's where mindfulness, same thing. That's where the mindfulness comes in. That's where you're like, okay, let me just check in here. Let me see what this is for a second. This is emotional hunger because I'm really not hungry because I just ate an hour ago. And then, and then you can check yourself. I think this is the best thing about mindfulness, is that literally you train your brain to do the work for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And what you're talking about, we could say almost exactly the same thing with porn or sex.
Yep.
You think, oh, I have such a high sex drive. Well, that may be true, but our subconscious mind is our brain, our mind is so powerful. It's like, I'm the traveling salesperson. I'm in a hotel by myself. I'm lonely. Maybe I'm scared about making my numbers this month. And all of a sudden I find myself really triggered sexually. Now, is it because that, your body is looking to procreate, or is your subconscious mind going, Eric, you're not feeling really good right now. You could feel really good right now. Just get out the porn. Or you know what? When you're at a hotel, you're surrounded by all these different restaurants. Why not go binge eat? So is it are you really physically hungry? Are you really needing a sexual release? Or is it your subconscious mind wanting you to pacify yourself?
I think that's all great questions, 100%.
And again, the salespeople, I really think, like, the traveling salesperson is almost a cliche of, the one night stands and hookups. And
I agree. It's unfortunate too, but it's not even cliche. It's a fact in many cases,
Yeah.
It's just too bad.
So with your book, Tragic Hero, what are some, I don't know, tips, tactics, techniques, or stories, or that you could share with people that are struggling either with sex addiction or food addiction? What are some things that you've learned?
Well, one of the biggest things I've learned is the level of kindness we need to offer ourselves. It needs to be super high. I'm a big fan of Kristen Neff. She's a doctor. She does a whole series on self-compassion. She has the 3 elements of self-compassion. And, one of the things she says is, self-compassion is just the compassion you would offer to somebody else, but you offering it to yourself. So instead of doing our addiction and then beating the crap out of ourselves emotionally, right? You do the addiction and you're like, okay, you know what? You're not a bad person, right? You're not a horrible person. You didn't do what you did to hurt somebody. You were just in pain. Okay. Now you need to go get some help, right? But you need to give yourself the same compassion. Whatever you would say to somebody else, you should say to yourself. I've kind of adopted a strategy. You don't say anything to anybody or yourself that you wouldn't say to your kids, right? You wouldn't tell a kid they were lazy or stupid or fat or dumb or or drunk. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't do that. You shouldn't say it to yourself. So self-compassion is a key ingredient. Self-kindness, self-care is a key ingredient to healing, right? So
I love that.
So that's a big one for me is that. The other thing is I talk about getting radical transparency, radical honesty, and taking radical responsibility. So, radical transparency is really looking at things for how they are. Like let's look at this for what it is. Let's take the glasses off, the rose-colored glasses. Let's take off all the sheen. Let's peel back the layers and let's really look at how things. Let's be transparent, and then let's be like radically transparent, then radically honest. What does that mean? It means you look at it for what it is.
Mhm.
Like you call it as you see it. You don't say, "Oh, I'm a little overweight. Oh, I'll start eating tomorrow." But it's what? You're overweight. You're in a bad place physically, mentally, emotionally, and you must take care of yourself or you're going to die young. Your dad did. All right. And then you have to take radical responsibility. And that means if you need help, you go get it.
Yeah.
And then you have to do the work. Because even if you get help, Eric, you still need to do the work. Right?
That's right.
Right.
And it's work. There's a lot of work.
Who's the first person to climb up Mount Everest? What was his name?
I know. I don't know the guy's name, but I know who you're referring to.
But who was it? Come on, you remember?
I don't.
Anyways, Sir Edmund Hillary, right? So,
Thank you. Yes.
right? No, everybody remembers him, but nobody remembers his Sherpa's name. It was Tenzing Norgay. I was trying to find the year when it happened, but it was like 1953. So Edmund Hillary went up Mount Everest, first guy to scale the whole thing, but he had a Sherpa, Tenzing Norgay, brought him to the top. That's in 53 with like probably 1/10 of the technology we have today. Right? But here's the thing. Even though Tenzing Norgay knew about base camps, even though he knew about time to climb, time not to climb, time of the year to go, when to stop, when to go, keeping warm, eating, all that stuff, Hillary still had to climb behind him. Right? He still had to walk behind him and follow him all the way up there. He still had to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the same thing for the rest of us. Like we have to, even if we have a guide, we still have to do the work. I mean, how many counselors did I go to? How many therapists did I go to? How many coaches did I paid thousands of dollars for? How many Tony Robbins conferences did I go to? Which, by the way, were all awesome and helpful. You know what I'm saying? I went to so many things, but I wasn't ready to do the work.
Right.
So the benefit I did get was short-lived, and then I didn't do the work. And only when I decided that I was going to do the work and take the steps and deal with the pain and work through it and realize that it's a process and not an event, when I finally actually got radically responsible for what I needed to do, did it change? I mean, do I have any regrets? Yeah, I got a lot of regrets, you know what I'm saying? But I can't look back at all the dumb stuff, horrible stuff I did and beat myself up anymore. I just got to, you know what? I got so many years going forward. I just got to do the best that I can,
Yeah.
And so, but I think taking radical responsibility will, and getting radically transparent, radical honest with yourself, radically, responsible for things. Those are three things that everybody needs to do if they're going to really make a true change for themselves.
Radical acceptance. I can't think of his name. I had him on.
Yeah, there was a book that just came out a couple of years ago, didn't it?
Yeah, he was on my podcast, Radical Acceptance. Anyway, yes, I love what you're saying, and right now at this moment, there's somebody that is listening to this live or recorded, and they're really struggling right now. They're struggling with maybe multiple addictions. They're addicted to sex, and they're addicted to porn. They're addicted to food, and they're really struggling right now, maybe even considering suicide. What do you say to that person?
I wouldn't say anything to them. I would ask them questions.
Okay.
I would really, folks that I work with folks who have trouble getting on the phone, have self-sabotage issues, perfectionism. They have issues with approval and acceptance and stuff like that. Some of them have addictions to all kinds of things. But the first I ask them, I'm like, hey, let's first of all, let's give yourself some kindness. What's one nice thing you could say to yourself right now? Right? What are some nice things you can say about yourself? What are some good things you've done? Because we've all done good things. Tony Robbins calls it stacking. Let's kind of at least get you out of that horrible, horrible place. Let's stack. What's a good thing you've done? What's another good thing you've done? What's another good thing you've done? Okay, let's get to the point where you can hold your head up at least level and say, okay, let's go back. Let's take a look and let's figure out where this came from.
Yeah, but he says I haven't really done anything good.
Nothing. So you've never done anything good before in your entire life. You've not been nice. You've not been nice to one person your entire life. You've been mean to everybody.
Right. Yeah.
You've not been mean. You've been mean to everybody in your entire life. You never helped one person with anything. Is what I would say. And then I would just say, listen, people like you and I, actually, we're probably some of the nicest people on the face of the planet because we deal with everybody else's problems but ourselves. So I'm guessing you've probably done a lot of good things. The only person you haven't taken care of is yourself. Would that be right? And they go, yes. And I would say, hey, listen, let's go back and look, because I think what I've learned from this is that when you can help people go back and find out what caused it, they can start healing from it, right? I literally have people go back to their childhood if they have to and figure out what it is. Were you beaten up? Were you sexually abused? Were you ignored? It could be something small. I mean, I have people who have addictions and things like that who are perfectionists because they got made fun of in class one day, But for the people who are having trouble, it's being willing to look at the actual problem and saying, okay, it's not going to kill me. Okay, I see what it is now. It's a double-edged sword. It's painful, but there's hope there, right? When I go back and I can say, hey, this is why this happened, right? The reason that you're the reason that you're overeating, the reason that you're making this pain go away is because, your mom was an alcoholic and your dad stuck up for her instead of you, and your mom abused you and verbally abused you and treated you like crap. And the one place we go in life is because for acceptance and approval is our parents. And it's very painful when people who are supposed to love you don't love you, and are supposed to care for you don't care for you, and who are supposed to approve of you don't approve of you. So, and then I would say it's perfectly reasonable that you feel the way that you do. Right?
I love it.
Does that make sense? And then be like, hey, you know what? And it's not your fault. Okay, but it is your responsibility. And I love Will Smith's video, Fault versus Responsibility. He talks about it. I quoted in the book, but he says, look, it's not your fault you had an alcoholic parent. It's not your fault that all these horrible things happen to you. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Anybody who has an addiction, yes, they're taking the action to drink, to eat, to have sex, to do whatever. It's like, that's on us. We're taking the action. But the fact of the matter is we're not doing it to be hurtful, mean, bad people. We're doing it because we're in pain. And that's the only way we know to make the pain go away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One, I would like to talk about some of your big successes, how you've turned things around, and you kind of remind me a little bit, Grant Cardone.
Oh, Uncle G. Uncle G. He's a guy. He's a special guy. He's a real one.
Yeah, and why I bring him up is because he had some serious drug addiction problems, and he took that same obsession with drugs and moved it over into sales. And a lot of people say, being obsessed, that's a negative thing. He says, no, I just took that same obsession with drugs and put it in sales and became wildly successful. Mm-hmm. So tell us about some of your successes. And I also know, next week you're going to be on the Thanksgiving Times Square Today show and all this. Tell us, you've turned things around. You're doing some great things. Success Magazine.
Yep. Yeah. I've always wanted to help other people, and then in helping all those other people, I really neglected myself. But now that I'm, and I use the analogy, and I think you've probably experienced this too as my guest, because a lot of people who have challenges like we did or do experience this, is that we want to feel good about ourselves. And so we don't want to deal with our own pain. We don't know how to deal with our own pain, but we realize that if we're kind to other people and help other people, we can feel good about ourselves. Does that make sense? And so I spent my life, I wasn't a very good person my entire life, but I spent a lot of times in my life doing nice things for the people to feel good about them, also to get them to like me. Right? I was getting something back. I wasn't giving just to give, I was giving to get. And so that's always been part of my DNA. But now that I'm feeling good about myself and, talking about when you're on the airplane, they're like, if the oxygen mask comes down, you put yours on first and you put somebody else's on afterwards, right? Because you can't help anybody if you're really not taking care of yourself. So since I've gotten better, and really have healed from most of what happened, it's changed my attitude. It's changed my outlook. It's changed how I treat people. And and for me, I'm a little behind the eight ball. You go to federal prison for a year, your credit gets hammered. I spent, probably $80,000, $100,000 to try and minimize my prison stay as much as possible. Wow. I've lost millions of dollars. So part of what drives me is that I've got 4 kids, and I want to make sure they're taken care of. And I don't have I don't have a truckload left over, so I'm rebuilding that. But I know I can help people, and I know I can do something for people that a lot of other people can't do. And so I'm excited about it. And I just made a commitment, last October, about a year ago, I was like, you know what, because people, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. I'm like, I got to write a book. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to write a book. I did it originally because I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to, because, when you have an addiction, when you do things, you feel a lot of shame,
Yes.
Also sick of it. And the best way to take away your fear of something is to just lean into it, right? So I'm just
Yes.
I'm taking away all the power from it. I'm
Right.
admitting to all of it. You were a food addict. Yep. You were a porn addict. Yep. You were sexually abused. Yep. You went to prison. Yep. Bad father. Yep. Bad husband. Yep. All of it. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
I did it all. Right.
Mhm.
And that really, that's very freeing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just, I'm gonna write a book. And I finally wrote the book, and that was very freeing. And then I had an opportunity to be on this show because people found out about me, and now people are reaching out to me, talking to me, asking me for help for themselves and people that they know. And so then just by virtue of stepping up and being willing to help people authentically, earnestly, seriously, and just being committed to it and getting up every day, knowing that, my purpose is to make sure that, number one, I make sure my kids get to live a life that I didn't live, that I teach them how to love themselves from the young age, that I teach them how to choose a good partner, that I teach them how to use money properly, to teach them that it's okay to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what drives me, but also to leave a legacy of somebody who did not, who the end of the story was going to prison and then deciding he was going to kill himself because he had a bad relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that, and so as a result of that, I've been on podcasts, and, my book has been, well received, and people are calling me about it. And but I'm also working very hard to get in touch with people and get on their podcasts as well, and to try and spread my message. So, I'm on the phone, I have my coaching clients, I get referrals, I make sales calls, and I have coaching clients, different stuff still. So I'm doing lots of things myself to make sure that I grow my business as well. So same thing. It's still a lot of work, but I'm not dying. I'm not going to be put in the grave, in a grave knowing that I didn't go down swinging.
Right. And so if somebody wants to pick up a copy of your book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, how do they do that?
Just go to Amazon and type in Tragic Hero and Wally Bressler. It'll pop up, and it gets delivered pretty quickly. There's a Kindle version of it. And as an aside, I really try to make myself available for people. If you go to my website, you can sign up for a free 15-minute meeting with me, and I will help you find out what the essence of your problem is, probably within those 15 minutes. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 5, occasionally it's 20, but I will help you understand what you're facing and why you're facing it, and recommend some strategies to help you deal with it. So if you want to get on my calendar, just go to phonesalessecrets.com. Click on the link, grab 15 minutes. We'll chat. We'll probably do a Zoom call, answer some questions, and maybe I'm positive I can tell you what it is that's creating the problem for you, and I can even give you some strategies on how to deal with it. But at the end of the day, you've got to do the work.
In a quick nutshell, who would be your perfect client? If I were to recommend someone to you, as far as the addiction sales-ish part.
Yeah, I work with salespeople and entrepreneurs all day long. It's not that I can't help people that aren't salespeople and entrepreneurs, because I do. But if you're in a position where you're not living the life that you want, and your addiction or your challenges, your self-sabotage are getting in the way of you creating the great business you want for yourself, for creating the great life for yourself, that you're not able to produce and care for your family or yourself the way you want to. As they said in Tombstone, I'm your Huckleberry.
And Wally, again, for someone that wants to sign up with you, they go, what's your website?
Phonesalessecrets.com. Just right back here, phonesalessecrets.com.
Phonesalessecret.com.
Yep, right there.
Well, Wally, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It was awesome to be here. I appreciate it again. I'm sorry it took me so long to sign up, but I'm so glad I came to talk with you, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely. And again, if you catch this podcast early next week, Wally will be on Times Square today over the Thanksgiving week. And I'm going to close with one of my favorite quotes from Zig Ziglar, who says, "You are designed for accomplishment. You are engineered for success, and you are endowed with the seeds of greatness. Go forth and be great."
Are you struggling with porn addiction? Then schedule a free strategy call with Eric today at powerfuleric.com or call 314-717-0377.